Welcome back to the channel. This will be the transfer tips for Game Week 24, and you could call this a double Game Week special. There are some new graphics coming to the channel. You've probably seen some snippets in the last couple of videos and streams, like on the left-hand side of your screen right now, and there is more headed your way. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below as always, and you can see the most transferred in players at this point of the game week. Unsurprisingly, Cody Gakpo is first, and you've got the likes of Kluivert in Die, who got another return, a great celebration, and some bonus points. Trent and also Pickford in the top 5. So a lot of investment in these Everton and Liverpool assets. I'll be discussing the best triple-ups for both clubs and also the best non-double Game Week players to buy in Game Week 24. Smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. If you enjoy my content, our aim is to get this to over 200 likes and to keep on pushing towards new goals. 32,000 is next on the agenda. Check out all the links in the description below for my Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, the Discord server, FPL League, Draft Town, Spotify, as well as Blue Sky. All of that can be found in the description. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. You can see my final predictions for Game Week 24 in the deadline stream, but I've currently gone for the following scorelines. Nottingham Forest 1, Brighton 1, Bournemouth 1, Liverpool 2. But if you look later in this list, I do have Liverpool dropping points to Everton. I'm not entirely sure about that. They have the better team on paper. They could easily win both of these matches, but I just have that feeling Liverpool could drop points in the next 2 games. And either Bournemouth or Everton, I mean, on current form, you'd definitely say Bournemouth is going to be a very tricky opponent. But I've gone for Liverpool to get 4 points out of the 6 available in double Game Week 24. Everton 2, Leicester 0. That's going to be a difficult one. I think Leicester could score a goal, but a lot of those investing in Pickford, Mikalenko, Tarkowski, etc. will be hoping that isn't the case. I've gone for Newcastle 2, Fulham 1, Wolves 2, Aston Villa 2, Brentford 3, Tottenham 1. They are really close to pulling the trigger on Ange Postecoglou. I'm surprised it hasn't happened already to a certain extent. Manchester United 1, Crystal Palace 2. They've been very impressive on their travels. They're unbeaten in 7 Premier League games away from home. Arsenal 2, Man City 1. That's an interesting one. I think City could definitely cause problems and get a victory, but I've currently gone for a 2-1 win for the Gunners. I actually got their result against Wolves spot on, but I think the red cards definitely played a big part. Chelsea 3, West Ham 1, and then Everton 1, Liverpool 1. But you'll see my final predictions in the deadline stream, as I mentioned before. That gives you a bit of context in terms of the players I recommend this week, in terms of double game week options from Everton and Liverpool, and also the non-doublers, like I'm going to discuss in the buy, hold, sell, and skip sections, which are pretty much what you're used to on this channel. But it's going to be 3 players from each segment. But before I get into all of that, let's focus on those double game week assets. Let's take a look at the clean sheet odds and also the chance of scoring 2+ goals according to DraftHound. Liverpool are top with 57 and 64% chance of keeping a clean sheet respectively, which is quite high in my opinion. I think they'll concede in at least one of those matches. As for chance of scoring over 2 goals, they're by far the best in the league this week with 36% and 36%. I'm also quite surprised by those results. I think Bournemouth on paper should be the tougher game. And I've highlighted Everton here because in terms of clean sheet probabilities, they're only second behind Liverpool, and that's the way these teams are ranked at the moment. In last place, we've got West Ham against Chelsea, but I think they could get a sneaky result there. Graham Potter facing his former club, maybe a chip on his shoulder, you could argue. But if we look at the rest of, 3rd to 6th in terms of the teams likely to keep a clean sheet, we've got Aston Villa, Chelsea, Newcastle, and Spurs. I'm quite surprised by that, but then you've got the likes of Arsenal facing Man City, so you can maybe understand that to a certain extent. But that's what DraftTown have recommended at this point of the game week. It might change in a couple of weeks' time, so keep your eyes peeled once again for those updates. If there's anything you disagree with, any thoughts you have about these stats, let me know down in the comment section below. I'm always asked about the captaincy in every single deadline stream, so these graphics may prove useful in those deadline streams, but I have to say this week, I don't think there's any debate. Mohamed Salah will be the standout captain with a double game week against Bournemouth and Everton. But you can go against him with some other Liverpool players, in my opinion. Trent and Gakpo would be the standouts, and I'll talk about the ideal triple-up in Liverpool very soon. I've also gone for Palmer in 4th, despite a very disappointing performance against Man City. He is facing West Ham at home, and I could see him being the best single game week player in 24. Isak is 5th, facing Fulham at home. Then we've got Virgil, Diaz, Mbeumo, Watkins, and Ndiaye. I've sneaked in an Everton player here. I like Ndiaye as a player, by the way. The fact he's on penalties now, with Calvert-Lewin being sobbed off due to injury, I do think he's the standout budget forward for double game week 24, but I would hold your horses a little bit because with Everton, you'd still expect some inconsistencies, especially from their attackers. And in my opinion, the preference is investing in Pickford and maybe one of their defenders, as I'll get onto very soon. Do you disagree with these rankings? Maybe you agree. Let me know. It's going to look a lot different in future weeks, of course. This is dominated by Liverpool players. I think Van Dijk in a double always has a great shout. And people are going cold on Diaz. It would not surprise me if he goes big in Double Gameweek 24. It's time to rank those Liverpool players, and Mohamed Salah is first, as he has been all season. His underlying stats are simply insane. 19 goals, 13 assists, 81 shots inside the box, an XG figure of 16.56, 29 big chances, and 17 big chance created. He is arguably having his best ever season, which is saying a lot considering his output for Liverpool over the years. So there's no question mark really. You have to have Salah for Double Gameweek 24. It's not very often I say a player is essential, but for this game week, despite facing Bournemouth and Everton away, which isn't the easiest fixtures, I still think Salah is the best option for the captaincy and also for Liverpool. Trent is second. He is quite expensive for a defender, but he's always got that assist potential, and if he can keep a clean sheet, he's got a great chance of getting some bonus points. So he is second in the Liverpool rankings. He's also got some phenomenal stats, like 14 big chance created, only 3 fewer than Salah, despite being a right back, and 43 key passes. We all know by now Trent isn't your conventional fullback in this day and age, and he's also got some pretty poor underlying stats with the goal scoring, only 5 shots inside the box and 4 shots on target, but he's already scored this season. He's got 6 assists on set pieces. There's a lot to like with Trent Alexander-Arnold. And in third, it's another player with not the best of stats, but Cody Gakpo got a massive return in Game Week 23. I bought him in, so thankfully I broke my own transfer curse. It seems like Liverpool can't be jinxed at this point, so fair play to them. It's a tough one, I think, between Cody Gakpo and another Dutchman for that third best Liverpool player. And ultimately, like I've said in my recent videos and streams, it's about your team situation. Do you need to replace a defender and bolster that position? Do you need to buy a forward or maybe a midfielder? In some cases, some of you might be desperate for a goalkeeper. So I think that will shape your third Liverpool player. But Salah and Trent will be the top 2. Then it's a very close battle between Cody Gakpo and a few others. You could easily put Virgil van Dijk in third place for the best Liverpool players, not just for Double Gameweek 24, but over the course of the season. And in terms of stats, I think they're quite decent for a centre-back. He's got 18 shots overall, 15 of them being inside the box, an XG figure of 1.48, and 4 big chances. He only gets these opportunities from set pieces really, but I think Van Dijk always offers that aerial threat. The same goes for number 5 here, although it's not going to be to the same level. He got an assist against Ipswich Town, and that's Ibrahima Konate, who is a massive boost for Liverpool coming back from injury, and this centre-back partnership is amongst the best in Europe and also in the division. So I actually don't mind Konate. If you are struggling for funds and can't go to Van Dijk or Trent, I think Konate is still absolutely fine. But if you've got the funds and the means to go to these sorts of upgrades, I definitely recommend them if you can, but it's not the be-all and end-all. We saw Konate match Trent in Game Week 23 and outscore Virgil van Dijk, so I don't think it's a terrible pick by any stretch of the imagination. The same goes for number 6, who is definitely less appealing now than he was a couple of weeks ago, but Diaz always has that massive ceiling, and he can get a goal and an assist combined in the same match, maybe even a brace, and his stats are always pretty good. He's got decent shot volume with 44 shots this season, an XG figure of 6.03, and 14 big chances, but he had that really impressive period in the first few gimmicks of the season where he was actually outscoring Salah, but that quickly changed from gimmick 5 onwards, and he went on a very poor streak with only a few returns in a couple of months. So with Diaz, you can expect inconsistencies, but the high ceiling will always be there. It's extremely rare, to say the least, to have a goalkeeper as your best asset in FPL, but Pickford has been like that for Everton for several years now. He has 5 bookings in the last 8 matches. That is very annoying, to say the least, for owners, and it might only be a few more yellows until suspension, so that's my only real doubt with Jordan Pickford. But if you are looking for a Double Gameweek 24 goalkeeper, I think Alisson's perfectly reasonable, but I'd rather go for Pickford. He's more of a talisman for his club. He can get bonus points, make multiple saves, and he has made 2 penalty saves this season to deny Anthony Gordon and Erling Haaland. The underlying stats aren't particularly great for Everton defensively, but they always find a way to churn out a clean sheet when you least expect them to. Look at the Emirates earlier this season, also getting one against Chelsea when they were in good form at the time. So I think Pickford is right up there with Sells as the best goalkeeper in FPL. And if you're buying one right now, I'd go for Jordan Pickford with that double in Game Week 24, which includes Leicester at home. Liverpool, of course, isn't going to be great, but anything Pickford can get there will be a massive bonus. In second place, I've gone for Mykolenko. You could argue in isolation, Tarkowski is a superior asset if you've got the funds. The same goes for Branthwaite, who is a top central defender. He has so much potential, but if you also look at value, the odd bonus point Mykolenko can get, I think he's a very reasonable Everton asset, but I would understand if you would rank him lower in the Toffees assets, maybe below Branthwaite. Also, all these other defenders. Ashley Young, I'm not so keen on right now, especially with some cameos off the bench recently. And in third place, I think a lot of you would rank him higher. Ndai has been brilliant in recent weeks, and that's back-to-back returns for him now, scoring a penalty, doing the seagull celebration, and being booked, which I think was a bit harsh to be fair, but there you go. Ndai is third, he's going to go up in price very soon, and he's in the top 10 captaincy options that I ranked earlier in this video, so I think Ndai is absolutely fine, and he's probably Everton's best attacker by some distance. It's just, he's only started really coming to life with consistency in the last couple of weeks. I'd still be a bit hesitant and cautious about that, and personally, I wouldn't captain Ndai or any Everton player, although Pickford might be captained by some of you watching with his high ceiling as a goalkeeper. Perhaps you're not buying the hype for Double Gameweek 24, or you just want some single gameweek assets to really target certain fixtures, or to fund other moves which might include Liverpool, Everton players being transferred in. But Mbeumo is my number one suggestion to buy this week if you don't have him already. He faces Tottenham at home. I think that's a brilliant fixture for attackers, especially considering their recent form. They're winless in 7 Premier League games. They're 15th in the Premier League table, and if Everton win their game in hand, they drop to 16th. Whilst Brentford got a very impressive win against Crystal Palace away, and Mbeumo scored a penalty. Some of you, of course, would argue it was very fortunate. I completely get that. And I think it also swung the other way towards the end of the match when Mbeumo didn't actually miss a big chance, but it counted towards the Opta stats, and that resulted in him missing out on some bonus points. But ultimately, with the nature of the penalty being retaken, and Mbeumo preserving his 100% record in the Premier League from the spot, you could argue ultimately you're kind of complaining about nothing there, and Mbeumo was fortunate in the end to get a return. But he's fixture-proof, solid stats, great fixtures long-term, and I think Tottenham at home is one of them. Next up is Justin Kluivert. I'd still argue the best time to buy him is Gameweek 25, but I talked about skipping him last week and waiting until 25, and look what he did against Forest. Bournemouth destroyed them 5-0. Kluivert was instrumental, but it was Dango Ouattara who scored the hat-trick, and he stole the show this time round. You've also got Semenyo, who's been so consistent in the last couple of weeks, and ultimately a Bournemouth attacker is worth buying for the long term. It's going to be a template pick very soon. You could go early despite the Liverpool fixture and maybe get a return here because the Cherries have been mightily impressive despite all their injuries, and Iraola has done a terrific job there with the Cherries. Next up, though, is going to be another Brentford player, Wissa. I'd highly recommend going for 1 or 2 Brentford assets in the attacking front. I'm not a big fan of the others. Van den Berg at the back, Flecken in goal. Even Schade, who is a decent differential and a budget midfielder. I think it's just Mbeumo and Wissa, and that's about it. I like that double up for the next couple of weeks, and potentially even for months. I could see both of them churning out consistent output. Wissa, of course, with that great celebration before Mbeumo even scored the retaken penalty. Maybe a distraction tactic, you could say. But I think Brentford have a very good attacking line, and Mbeumo and Wissa are some of the best forwards in the Premier League. We are now onto the hold section, and Chris Wood is currently the most transferred out player ahead of Double Gameweek 24, but I would not recommend that when he's about to face Brighton, who have been in good form themselves, but they succumbed to a 1-0 defeat at home against Everton, and Chris Wood scored in the reverse fixture from the penalty spot at the Amex Stadium in a 2-2 draw at the time. I think Forest assets are still worth holding on to. That might include Souls in goal, their defenders like Milenkovic, Aina and Nico Williams, and Chris Wood up front. Even Elanga as a budget midfielder is fine, although I think there are better options elsewhere, which I've discussed in my recent podcasts and videos. But Chris Wood has had a great season. It's a blip from him. He's been so consistent in the last couple of weeks. 14 goals for the campaign, an XG figure of 7.83, so there is a degree of overperformance for sure. 18 big chances, but he is clinical this season, and I think Forest can still score goals in the next couple of matches, and that 5-0 loss against Bournemouth could be seen as a blip and something that won't happen very often, but they have to get their act together, otherwise they could start falling down the table, and all that hard work from the first half of the season can be undone. But Chris Wood is still one of my favourite forwards. Maybe some of you are considering Chris Wood to Ndai. I completely get that, but otherwise, I'm not really too sure if I'd be making a forward transfer. Chris Wood to Gakpo, of course, is also very reasonable. Don't get me wrong, and I would make that switch, but in most cases, I'd be looking to keep the New Zealand striker. The same goes for Anthony Gordon, who was so popular in the last couple of weeks, but he's been transferred out by many managers right now. He was quite underwhelming against Bournemouth, where he was close to getting a return, and then against Southampton, only 1 assist in a 3-1 victory for the Toon. His underlying stats are good. 49 shots this season, 14 big chances, and 46 key passes. And don't get me wrong, I wouldn't be looking to buy Anthony Gordon right now, and most Newcastle assets bar Isak, because they will likely blank in Gameweek 29, as they've got 1 foot in that Carabao Cup final already with that 2-0 lead against Arsenal, and they now take it back to St James's Park. But if you've got Anthony Gordon, I'd recommend holding him in most cases, because I think he can be very solid over the next couple of weeks. The same goes for William Saliba, who was a sell in my last video, but at the time, reports indicated he would miss several weeks worth of action and he'd be a major doubt for the Man City game in 24, but he made his return against Wolves in that 1-0 victory for Arsenal. Despite the circumstances, a very contentious red card to say the least, they found a way to get it through over the line, and Calafiori scored a brilliant goal. Saliba and Gabriel were immense at the back. Declan Rice and Thomas Partey in the midfield were also very solid, and a lot of decent performances there from the Gunners. David Raya in goal made some fantastic saves, and I still think Arsenal have the best defence in the Premier League. They've got the least amount of goals conceded alongside Liverpool, but they've also played 1 game more, so I do think those underlying stats will eventually lead to more clean sheets and returns for the likes of Saliba. So that's one change I would make from last week's video. I think Saliba is a hold, but I still understand if some of you want to sell Arsenal defenders, which includes Saliba, if you've got a double or triple up and want to trim it down. I still think that's viable, but Arsenal have some great fixtures after Man City in Double Gameweek 24, facing the likes of West Ham and Leicester, and Arsenal could go on a run and push Liverpool all the way. Let's see if they get their act together and if they can capitalise on any drop points from Liverpool. Unsurprisingly, we've got a few Spurs players in the sell section. James Maddison is one of them. I think those that held him for that Leicester game were very unfortunate. It seems like it was a last-minute thing to drop him out of the squad. He felt something. I think Ange Postecoglou described it as something sore. So he's got a knock. He's yellow flagged in FPL. And ultimately, with Spurs' form, all their injuries, I'd be looking to sell most of their assets. And that includes James Maddison, who has been actually very effective when he does get the starts and minutes, but he's tailed off in the last 6 to 8 game weeks, and it has been a big shame because he was so close to 100 FPL points even back then, and he hasn't gotten many since, and Spurs have just been dropping down the Premier League table, and only 1 win, which came against Southampton, and Maddison was pivotal in that, and afterwards you're just seeing a lot of drop points, shocking results, and a lack of creativity at times, and I think Maddison does help Spurs a lot in those attacking areas. Kulusevski is probably the best Spurs asset right now, especially in that midfield. Heung-min Son is not worth the money, and Maddison, if he can stay fit and start, would be a decent choice in this game, but right now, I'd be looking to sell. The same goes for Pedro Porro, who has the attacking contributions, 2 goals and 5 assists this season. He has 34 key passes, 4 big chance created, and only 1 big chance. 34 shots is also pretty decent, but I'd argue that Porro's stats are down compared to this time last year, and he's not justifying that 5.4 million price tag. I'd rather double up on Arsenal defensively with the likes of Gabriel and Saliba, go for Gvardiol, Lewis Hall, Milenkovic, although you could argue some of those options I just mentioned, the time has passed with those players because their fixtures have turned for the worse, but I still think they're better than Pedro Porro. The third and final sell for Double Gameweek 24 though is João Pedro, who simply hasn't been good enough. I know he's a budget forward and he might be the ideal 8th attacker, so to speak, but you're going to get a lot of inconsistencies from him and Brighton, and his stats are pretty meh. 8 big chances, 5 big chance created, and an XG figure of 3.95. But he is a bonus points machine, and the 5 goals and 5 assists in 17 matches is actually a pretty decent tally overall, and in fact he's got the same number of goals as Ndiaye in fewer appearances and minutes. But I think João Pedro is a sell at this point, and I'd make that switch to the Senegalese striker from Everton. The final section is the skips. Am I making the same mistake, but this time with Ouattara, and it was Kluivert last week and Semenyo the week before? Do we just buy Bournemouth assets now, despite facing the best team in the league in Liverpool? I don't think he's a bad shout, and from Gameweek 25 onwards, I think that's the best time definitively to buy Kerkez, Howson. Some of you might be considering Kepa in goal, which isn't a terrible shout, and then these midfielders like Ouattara, Semenyo, and Kluivert. My favourite is going to be the Dutchman because he's on penalties, he's got 2 hat-tricks this season, and he's getting some massive returns and showing a bit of consistency now. But I think Ouattara is still a decent shout, but but I'd buy him in Game Week 25. Ultimately, though, if you want to do it this week, I don't think it's a terrible move, but Kluivert will be first, Semenyo second, and Dango Ouattara is third, but he is playing out of position, up front as the lone striker, in Evanilson's absence, and despite all these injuries, like I said before, Bournemouth are finding a way to win, and win big against some very good teams like Newcastle, 4-1 away from home, and a 5-0 victory over Nottingham Forest. Even the likes of Arsenal and City, who beat them comprehensively as well, couldn't do that. Bournemouth having a great season, and the sky's the limit for them. They're unbeaten in 12 Premier League matches, which is a club record. Second is Marmoush, who has incredible stats this season, of course, dating back to his time at Frankfurt. 20 goals and 14 assists in 27 matches. He had a fairly decent debut against Chelsea in that 3-1 win, and you would expect him to get some goal contributions fairly soon, but it might take him a little while to adapt, and he might get some cameos off the bench and sometimes be rotated. So I'd rather skip him for now and wait until C's fixtures get better, because you'd expect some rotation with Savio and Foden in the winger positions, and I don't think he starts week in, week out. It's Arsenal away next. He might make his first goal or score his first goal there. It wouldn't surprise me completely, but I still think that Gunners' defence is very difficult to breach, and ultimately Marmoush isn't the best midfielder to buy in Game Week 24. The same goes for Dominik Szoboszlai, who is not a terrible option, and when he does score, he's going to get bonus points. But for Liverpool, I think Diaz is a better midfielder to buy. You've also got Gakpo up front, Mohamed Salah goes without saying, and the likes of Konate, Van Dijk, Trent, and Alisson in goal would be ranked higher when setting the best double Game Week 24 assets for Liverpool. The last thing to discuss with transfer tips in Game Week 24 is the assistant manager chip. Do we use it on Arne Slot, David Moyes, or save it for later in the season? Now, my current plans will be discussed in detail for the team selection, but it's very difficult for me to get to either manager. In the case of Liverpool, I made my bed in Game Week 23 with 2 transfers for a -4 hit, buying Trent and Gakpo, so there's no real need for me to take another hit and then sell one of those Liverpool players to make a slot open for Arne Slot, because remember, the assistant manager will take part of your triple up, so you can't have 3 Liverpool players and Arne Slot. You need to get rid of one of them, and they also take part of your budget, so you need an extra 1.5 million to spare on top of your 50-man squad to buy the Dutch manager. And in the case of David Moyes, he's 0.5 million. He'll be much more accessible for a lot of people, and you can get table bonuses against the likes of Crystal Palace in Game Week 25, but don't expect that, of course, against Leicester. Liverpool, though, would be a massive result there for Everton, and those that go for David Moyes, if they can get a draw even, that would be massive, and of course a win would be even better. We saw that at Goodison Park last time out in April, a 2-0 win there for Everton, and this will be the last Merseyside derby at Goodison Park. If I had to pick one manager to put the assistant manager chip on, it would be Arne Slot, but I honestly think David Moyes' high risk, high reward approach could still go really well. But you've also got that Wolves fixture in Game Week 25 for Liverpool, and I still think they'll get 4 points at least against Bournemouth and Everton. So I think it's a very safe, conservative pick to go for Arne Slot. If you do look at this chip though, with people making these kind of data analysis of previous seasons and how it would have translated in terms of points, it does seem like if you can hit those table bonus and go for the high risk, high reward approach and it goes well, you will get a massive swing in your favour. But it can also go the other way, where it can go terribly wrong. So I think you've got a higher floor with Arne Slot, but a lower ceiling. And with David Moyes, you've got a low floor, but an extremely high ceiling to say the least, and the points potential could be massive. I still lean towards Arne Slot though. If you disagree, let me know down in the comment section below, and we can discuss this in more detail in the deadline stream very soon, and also across future videos. But I'm not going to use the assistant manager chip this week. I'll likely use it later in the season, and I think Game Week 31 to 33 or around Game Week 35 in preparation for double Game Week 36 could work very well too, but ultimately I suggest using it during a double game week. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. I miss to get this to a ton of likes and to keep on pushing towards new goals like 32,000 subscribers. Follow me on X and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description below for my Patreon and the championships for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks. The Discord server, FPL League, Draft Town, Spotify, and Blue Sky can also be found in the description, and I hope to see you in the upcoming deadline stream and across all my other FPL videos. Keep your eyes peeled for the best wildcard team for double Game Week 24 and the team selection, where things are going to get very interesting and another -4 hit could be taken.